I know I ended by saying tomorrow we start on the rear spar, but that's not true. You got a lot of work to do. At least I like to finish up most of the spar work before moving on to the rear spars. And just so there's no confusion, I always mark in two places, near this end and the other end, that it's the left wing and this is the forward side of it. Not that they're pretty much a mirror of each other, so they can be done either way, except the fact that this side of it I know is exactly the same distance to the web, and this here is what aligns it to the ribs. And well, I guess the other thing is you could accidentally put this in backwards if you weren't paying real close attention. But I will draw on the 1/4 inch or 2.2 degrees at the root of the wing, and at the 50-inch mark, this here is just a block like this for the jury struts to come down to the main strut. But for the main strut, lifting strut, they give you a tangent point to meet 1 inch off of the bottom beam of your spar, 1 inch off, and 96.5 inches from the root. So what I do is I clamp a square. This here's another shed find or barn find. I think I got this from my dad's barn. Literally dug it out of the the mess there and cleaned it up. But it's nice and square, and I like to use it. But I put a red dot. You probably can't even see it. Yeah, red dot right there. That is 1 inch down, and this is 96.5 inches. And okay, I just measured the print, and that's 26 degrees off the bottom, or 154 degrees from this side all the way over. And I just slide it over, scribe my line down there, and then measure the distance from that red dot to the edge here. There's the red dot. Measure that distance, and that'll be the center line of all of this here buildup right there. So I'll take and I'll draw a center. Finish this line on out, and then I'll draw a center line, and then I'll draw the opposing side. And it just so happens this is 575 thousandths, which would make this, you know, a little over 1 1/8 wide, which is, I believe that's what that is. Maybe it's 1 1/4 inches, but. And lucky me, I found a stick that actually, when I pivot it between the two webs, at least with this here spar, it comes out to the exact angle. And it's shadowed right there, and you can't really see it. So that's going to be one side. Too bad it's not 575 thousandths wide. I could just set it here and right along that straight edge and do the center line. But what we can do is we can get the opposing line, do a line here, and do it from the opposing line, and then split the difference. That'll be the center. Sorry for all the background noise, the furnace and the chicks. I thought the chicks would be outside already. Oh, and then there's the grandchildren too, grandchild. But anyways, we're having Arctic weather again, or January weather again. It's 15 degrees out. Anyways, the buildup is 1.5 inches, or close enough to 1.5 inches wide. And this here is 575 off the center line. So the difference between 575 and half of that, 3/4 of an inch, is 175 thousandths. So we'll just set this for 175 thousandths, and close enough. and make a mark right there, and make one down here. I'm not left-handed, so this isn't easy. All right, good enough. And there we go. So this here will be the root side of the buildup, and lining up the center line with the red dot, and my straight edge runs right along the center line, so that's pretty accurate. I was watching Algie Yates' video and realized I'm not given near as much information as I probably should be, such as whenever you glue plywood, you're always sanding the top layer. He does denatured alcohol. My wood is so open-grained and clean, I haven't used denatured alcohol. Maybe I will start doing that, but you always want to use some 80 grit and go across grain. Speaking of across grain, my grain is going like Algie Yates showed. You want your outer grains on your plywood going up and down. But on these ones, anytime you're bonding plywood to plywood, you want the outer grain of this one and then the matching grain on the other side of this one, or this side also, they are the same. You want them to go the opposite direction, as if, or at least at 45 degrees to it. So notice the grain on this is going this direction, and this grain is going this direction. And of course, I scuffed up right here, and then if I put something on top of this, I would be scuffing this up with 80 grit sandpaper. And it's not a lot, you're not removing a lot. You just want to take and get anything off the edge that might be preventing a good glue joint, and scuffing it up a bit. It gives all these thicknesses of plywood to build up for your strut attach point, but really, you know, 3/8 there, so 3/8 per side would leave you with 7/8, which an eighth has to be divided, hence the 1/16 filler block. And then the 1/8, which goes across the top and along the spar also, and gets cut off even with the spar. And of course the aluminum link goes on down to, you know, a 1-inch radius of that, or whatever that is, 625 thousandths radius, I guess, around that red dot there, which is that tangent point of 96.5 inches. But really, just build it up until it's even with this, because I have not had one come out even yet. So if it's slightly higher, that's no problem. You just sand it back and blend it. By slightly higher, I mean like 20 thousandths or something like that, 15. But otherwise, find something else that a different thickness that's going to build it up to get it even with the spar on this end at least. You know, it's okay if it has just a tiny bit of taper from this end. It doesn't have to match up here. I don't believe, and even if a rib did attach, like line up right in here, you can always notch it, and it's easy to line it up if it goes. And I do believe one rib does end up right in this area. And of course, you got to chip out all this glue, or cut out the glue that's up in this corner. I suppose you could, not that thick place, but in the other areas where there's hardly any, you could just chamfer your block just a little bit. But for a big blob like that, yeah, you want to cut that out of there. In this 2" by 1.5" block, that's gonna bring the jury strut attach point. I'm not gonna make it near that big. I'm gonna reduce it for weight because I'm using commercial white ash, and that won't be a problem. I'll probably do several pieces, and the bottom piece I'll probably leave pretty close to that size, and then the subsequent pieces will be smaller. And on the back side, it doesn't show anything for the back side, but I don't, this Baltic birch plywood, it's not the hardest stuff, so I'm going to take and put a little strip of commercial white ash, real thin one, like a 1/16 of an inch, or less than that even, 1/32 of an inch, and that will strengthen that up on the back side, and I won't have to put the big fat washers on it. Not big fat, I meant big diameter. And here's a little error. Okay, in order to get that in at just the right angle so this laid perfectly, I ended up cutting it short about 3/16 of an inch. So I'm going to take a piece that's just the same thickness as this 1/8 inch, shave it down so it fits down in there, because all of the energy that's going to be put through this here, you want it transferred all the way, not just to the web, but all the way up to the upper spar cap. Notice how I've got the grain orientation opposing each other. This one going this way, this one is going this way, and this one here's about 45-degree direction this way. So we've got 136 thousandths down from the edge of the spar cap, and that's without compressing it real well with clamps. So I'm going to get a piece of commercial white ash that's about closer to 140 thousandths, and do the last piece on here. And incidentally, that piece only has to go to back to here. It doesn't go all the way to the spar cap. And we got a super tight grain. We got a super even blend. Get out of the light there. So I'm going to go ahead and glue this up and clamp it down. So having capped or sealed the gussets with T88, this here's the 50" for the jury strut attach point. This side is complete as far as all the buildup. So I'll give it 8 hours and I'll flip it over and do the other side. Tomorrow, my health is good enough now, I can go back to work. So tomorrow I start work again. So I don't know, probably tomorrow I'm going to do a review of how much I've spent so far, and a total cost, and do materials and cost analysis up to this point.